I'm going to talk to you about my customer, which is Schiphol Airport, Amsterdam Schiphol Airport, and how we automated the process from going from BIM models to ArcGIS, and how we try to be and have this kind of nice integrated 3D approach. So background about me, Oscar. I'm from the Dutch Avineon Tensing office, and there I can classify myself as an FME technology specialist. And ever since I've been to Seattle for the UC, I'm also the FME business evangelist. I can talk to you about solutions and that kind of stuff. And I kind of know my way around the FME stack, FME form, FME flow. I do the trainings, and if you need to know anything about licensing, I can also talk about that. And I'm going to talk to you today about the difference between BIM and GIS, about Schiphol's 3D approach, how we did an FME solution that kind of runs some ArcPy to get there in the end, and discuss what FME's added value was in this scenario. I don't know how many of you are familiar with BIM. Hands up if you ever work with BIM, or if you know what it stands for, a bit more hands. Because BIM and GIS, they're two different worlds. The BIM world is more focused on semantics. I want to know my objects. I want to know the childs of my object. While the geographic world is more about where is something. And if you look at the data formats that are in BIM, they're completely different than a tabular data. Where in BIM, everything is about a decomposition. It's about a hierarchy. Something is part of a higher level. You have a building site, which might have buildings. A building might have floors. A floor might have walls, doors, etc. So it's a very hierarchical system. Well, if you go to the GIS world, it's layers. I have different layers. I might intersect them and get more value, but everything is separate. BIM also focuses really on the small scale, on a high level of detail. I'm interested in the nuts and bolts. I'm interested in a light bulb. If you go big, it doesn't really work. It's usually in millimeters. We already heard it with the DGN, the microstation format. It could be in millimeters rather than meters. And if you look at GIS, it's large scale. It's about less detail. If you have a 5 centimeter resolution, that's considered nice. It's also a different focus, whether it's the outdoor environment or it's the indoor environment. BIM, the building world, is inside. GIS is usually outside. If we talk about the math behind geometry, BIM goes crazy with solids and mathematical volumetric operations. I have a line which can get a thickness, which get a height, which might have an opening, and in that opening that might be a window. You can all do that with math. It's horrible for FME, but it works. And GIS, it's nice. If you have a cube in GIS, it's 6 faces. Yeah, it's quite convenient. And don't get me started about projections. I'll go into that. BIM is a locally oriented system. I have my own defined zero, while GIS usually has a location on the planet. And that's one of the challenges we have to deal with. And if you look at the focus where you use both systems, BIM is more for design, construction, facility management, asset management, while GIS is more for the analysis, the planning, the mapping, know what's where, and how we can change that. And then if we go back to Amsterdam Schiphol Airport, that's where I have to apply this stuff. It's a pretty big airport. I was just discussing, it's a hub for a lot of things. There's millions and millions of passengers. You can fly all over the globe from Amsterdam Airport. There's quite a bit going on. There's a lot of assets there. There's a total of 223 aircraft stands, so where an aircraft can park itself and get passengers. 91 of those connected stands where you can just walk to one of the tubes. No idea what it's called in English. We have to manage all that stuff. So if you look, there's 6 runways. Currently, this one big runway is just reserved for the NATO summit. So nobody's allowed to use it except important people. But we have to manage this space. This is the actual airport. So we kind of have that challenge. It's huge, but we have to do asset management. So we have to know the light bulbs. We have to know wall sockets. And we try to get those two worlds together and have that integrated approach. We do it with BIM, and we try to do it with GIS. Schiphol was crazy. They said, hey, we have main contractors. We don't want to do our own renovations or maintenance on stuff. We just have organizations to do it for us, but we have to get those assets. And BIM and GIS need to be integrated. So they build like a nice management overview of how this stuff should work. And what's very important, there is this data dictionary that just describes all the assets that Schiphol Airport has. What's a wall socket? What's a light bulb? What's a light fixture? How is the light fixture integrated into a system of low voltage etc. So it's all modeled out, kind of the BIM semantics of what's out there. You can see there's BIM all across the organization, in projects, in contractors and who are maintaining the stuff. Schiphol Airport, who has to like do their operations on the data. And we've been doing GIS stuff forever, so the whole central system is GIS based. But you have to get that inside information. And that's we have FME. We have FME to get data from the main contractors into our GIS system and to deliver data from our GIS system outwards. And that BIM data still needs to get there. So what do? We have all these BIM models that are from buildings. They have models per discipline. So one is about the electrical installations, one is about all the water systems, all is about the architectural elements, structural elements, and unfortunately they're all in a local coordinate system. Schiphol has its own zero relative to the Dutch national grid. So I have to just first get those files on the right location. So if I would import them in GIS, that I get some stuff. So what I do is I read my site points and my project points from Revit, and I determine, hey, is this a survey point that I know? And if it's a survey point that I know, I read those survey points and I check, hey, is this a combination of survey and project points that I know, where I know the reprojection? And if I have it, I'll pick out, hey, it's all in the Dutch system, so I have to make a projection file. And then sometimes I have to move that model from the Schiphol zero to like the Dutch national grid zero. I have to determine for every file what it is and create files. Well, and the workspace kind of looks easy. I read those site points. I have to generate the projection file for my BIM models, as he knows what's the projection file. And I have to make maybe a transformation, and we do that with the, as I mentioned here, the universal world file or a specific one for a model. And then my data is on the right place. But then we need to get it into ArcGIS. FME handles Revit quite nicely. ArcGIS has a very specific flavor of BIM they support. So I tried to do the stuff all with FME first, but then I figured out I'm still stuck with ArcPy. I have to find the definition that Esri uses. And what I do is here FME is my orchestration tool. So I run FME to run a series of ArcPy commands to make a large model. I also told you I have different models per discipline. In the end, in ArcGIS, I want to have one building, so I have to combine BIM files. I tried to use 5 BIM files for one command, and it's kind of had like, I think, a memory leak, because one model was fine, 2 models took, I think, a day, 3 models didn't finish after a week. So I said, let's do every model, make it a file geodatabase using an ArcPy command, and then FME comes in. I'll just combine 5 different file geodatabases into one new file geodatabase with that specific Esri flavor of file geodatabase that you need for a BIM model. After I combined all those models into one big model, I use ArcPy to make it into a building scene layer package, and then I publish it to ArcGIS Enterprise, or you can use ArcGIS Online. And it's actually not that hard. ArcPy just grabs some code from the community of Esri. So what I do, I have a list, a folder with BIM files. Those BIM files, they have their projection file, they have their transformation file, and I just call ArcPy to generate a file geodatabase. And then I read all those generated file geodatabases, combine them into one big file geodatabase, and in the end, I'm going to run some Python, again, ArcPy, to make it into a building scene layer package. And the building scene is important here, because that's a special representation that you can have of buildings. And then it kind of ends up here on Schiphol Maps as Enterprise, and here you can have your different layers. I currently have one big model, and with that model, I can decide which disciplines do I want to activate. Do I want to see my architectural elements, or do I want to see my structural elements? And here I can see the different disciplines, and I think I can kind of walk into a building. I do think Esri still needs to do a bit of work here. And we can see the BIM model, how it is in real life. And what you might see here, there is kind of a problem, because my air ducts, I think I'm going to hit my head if I go through here. This is a BIM model that was generated based on the GIS data that we have. And somewhere in the elevation, the relative floor height, something got wrong. And what we want users to be able to do here is just right-click and flag these objects and say, hey, this object, something's wrong with it, it needs to be adjusted. Then you kind of get a feedback loop where BIM the data that's there, that's not visible for a whole Schiphol airport scale, we can visualize it here, we can go through it, we can work our way around it. Yeah, and this is pretty cool. And what we now kind of do is we do it per building, so we're not able yet to put the whole of Schiphol into one big model. We are going to try to do it and see if my little laptop, which is still a heavy laptop, can process this kind of information. Our users, they're usually not the ones with a big laptop. They might even run in a virtual desktop to see if we can, what's the size that we can deliver to our customers. And in the end, FME was used to get this data on the map. Before it was just all these separate little BIM files, and now we have one large image where we can walk through, see stuff, and FME just schedules it and has an automation which, hey, there's a new model, run that one file geodatabase, combine it again, push it back into ArcGIS, and that way we have one flawless process. That's the thank you.